Ms. Mtanga, thank you very much for your time. What prompted the inquiry? It's been a 4-year study.
Thank you. Thank you for having us here, Xoli. The inquiry was prompted by a number of factors. Initially, there were complaints, a number of complaints relating to exclusive leases that the Commission had received and had investigated. And we understand that those continue. It continues, that is the Commission, to receive these complaints. And then in relation to the competitive issues applicable to spaza shops, it was what was in the public domain, in the media, and all of it relating to competitive dynamics that are occurring in that space that prompted the Commission to consider embarking on an inquiry that covers spaza shops.
Now, as you were conducting this study, what were some of the justifications for entering into these exclusive lease agreements with the malls?
Primarily, there were a number of justifications given by the national supermarket chains. The main one was the financing arrangements that they have, the funding arrangements that existed between the banks and the developers and the national supermarket chains, which were implied to require exclusivity. That was our understanding. We then interrogated this and investigated it further. We met with most of the major banks, and as well as the property developers, and established that this was not the case. Not a single funding or financing institution required any exclusivity. So we understood that this was not the case. Another justification that was given was that when national supermarket chains are approached to consider setting up in a shopping center or a mall, they'll then be tied up to an agreement for 10 years, and 10 years and beyond. And therefore, they also come into that. They'll be the only operator in the market for a while. It will be a new center, a newly established shopping center, a newly established shopping mall that they have to basically create footfall for, and they would therefore carry the burden of creating that footfall. And then whether the mall or the center succeeds or not, they will still be tied up to the mall.
So it was a massive burden on.
So it was a massive burden on the retailers themselves, and with that they then asked for. It was one of the reasons. So it was a number of factors that they put to us.
Now, of course, as your report says, this has done untold damage to competition, and also just pushing out any new entrants into the market. Importantly, though, the recommendation you make is an immediate end to these exclusive agreements. But here's a question: how do you enforce compliance? Because you are saying in your report that this is a voluntary process.
It is a voluntary process, and it is a recommendation that we're making. So in as much as we're saying there must be immediate cessation of exclusive lease agreements in relation to small and medium enterprises, specialty retailers, as well as grocery retailers in non-urban areas. That is all a recommendation from our side. There will be a process in the next 6 months by the Commission, in terms of which it will try and engage with the national retailers. This is basically ShopRite, Pick n Pay, and Spar. And that will be an engagement that rides upon work already done by the inquiry. We had already been in engagements with them, and there had been talks, and they'd also come around in agreeing on some things that we wanted done. Right. So it's not like there was no understanding on this.
All right. So regulations are afoot.
Yeah, there is some kind of an understanding that was there, but we found that we felt the views were too divergent. Each retailer would come with its own undertaking, or with its own way of wanting to adhere to what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then it became difficult for us to find consensus within the time period we had. So hence we're asking the Commission to do so. The second part to it is that should that engagement, 6-month engagement with the Commission has to embark on, fail, then we have recommended that the Minister or government then consider a legislative framework to regulate these exclusive leases and deal and that will be a regulatory framework that addresses the issues that we have identified. For example, the impact that they have.
All right, Lula Mamtanga, thank you very much for making the time to speak to us and explaining this process for us. She is with the Competition Commission and a panelist who carried out this grocery retail market inquiry.